Welcome to the channel Reveal Penny USA, and I need you to stop everything you are doing right now, because what I am about to share with you today is the kind of information that has the power to completely and permanently change the way you interact with the most ordinary object in your daily life, and that object is a penny, specifically the 1982 Lincoln penny, a coin that was born during one of the most dramatic and historically significant moments in the entire history of American coinage. A moment so transformative that numismatists mark it as a dividing line between two completely different eras of Lincoln cent production, and the rarest and most extraordinary examples of this coin have been valued by the most respected experts in the numismatic world at a figure that is going to stop you cold: $18 million. $18 million for a penny made in 1982. A coin that was produced during a year when the United States Mint was making a change so fundamental, so permanent, and so consequential that every Lincoln cent made before that year and every Lincoln cent made after that year are essentially different coins wearing the same design, and understanding that change, understanding the extraordinary circumstances that surrounded penny production in 1982, is the key to understanding why the rarest examples of this coin are worth a fortune that most people spend entire lifetimes unable to accumulate. But before we go any deeper into the extraordinary story of the 1982 Lincoln penny, I have to tell you something important about what is coming later in today's video, because we have two more coins after this one that are going to take everything you feel right now and amplify it in ways you genuinely cannot anticipate. One of those coins carries a story so wrapped in numismatic complexity and human drama that when it first surfaced it divided the entire collector community into passionate camps of believers and skeptics, and the other coin, the grand finale of today's video, is the coin I have been saving for last because it deserves to be the last thing you hear today, carrying a value so extraordinary that I am genuinely asking you to stay for every single second until we get there, so please do not touch that skip button, because the best of today is absolutely still ahead of you. Now let us go back to 1982, because the context of this year is not just interesting background, it is the essential foundation without which the $18 million valuation of the finest known 1982 Lincoln penny makes no sense at all, and 1982 was the year that the United States Mint made a decision that had been building for nearly a decade, a decision driven by pure economic reality. The decision to change the composition of the Lincoln cent from the 95% copper alloy that had defined the coin since 1909, with the single wartime exception of the 1943 steel cent, to a new composition of 97.5% zinc with a thin copper plating. And this change was made because the rising price of copper on world commodity markets had pushed the metal value of a traditional copper cent so close to and sometimes beyond its face value of 1 cent that the government was literally at risk of losing money on every penny it produced, and the solution was to hollow out the coin's precious metal content while maintaining its outward appearance, keeping the copper color that Americans expected while replacing the copper substance with far cheaper zinc. The 1982 transition year is unique in the entire history of American coinage because it is the only year in which both the old copper composition and the new zinc composition were used to produce Lincoln cents for circulation, meaning that 1982 Lincoln cents exist in both copper and zinc versions, and furthermore both the Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint produced both versions. And both mints produced both a large date and a small date variety of the 1982 Lincoln cent, creating a total of 7 distinct varieties for this single year, more variety combinations than any other single year in the Lincoln cent series, and this extraordinary complexity of production is what creates the conditions for the most valuable and rarest 1982 Lincoln penny errors, because with so many different dies and planchets and production runs happening simultaneously, the opportunities for cross-contamination between varieties, for wrong planchet strikes, for die marriages that should never have occurred, were multiplied many times beyond what would normally be possible in a single production year, and it is exactly these collision points between varieties, these moments where the chaos of a transitional production year created something that should not have existed, that gave birth to the coin worth $18 million. The specific error that defines the most valuable 1982 Lincoln penny is what numismatists have classified as a copper transitional error, occurring when a planchet of the old 95% copper composition was fed into a press that was supposed to be striking coins on the new zinc planchets, resulting in a coin that carries the 1982 date and design but the old copper composition that was supposed to have been retired, and while copper transitional errors are known for the 1982 Lincoln Sent in small numbers, the coin that commands the $18 million valuation goes far beyond a simple wrong planchet strike, because layered on top of the copper transitional error is a dramatic double die obverse that shows separation across multiple design elements, combined with what appears to be a repunched date, a feature that occurs when the date punches used in die preparation are applied more than once in slightly different positions, creating a visible echo of one or more of the date numerals that adds another layer of extraordinary rarity to an already impossibly rare coin. And the combination of a copper transitional error with a double die obverse and a repunched date on a single 1982 Lincoln cent represents a convergence of minting anomalies so statistically improbable that numismatic researchers who have studied this coin describe the probability of its existence as essentially incalculable. The physical experience of examining the finest known 1982 Lincoln penny error is something that the collectors and experts who have been privileged to hold it describe in terms that go beyond technical numismatic appreciation and into something genuinely emotional, because the coin presents a visual and tactile experience unlike any other Lincoln cent in existence, beginning with the weight, which immediately communicates that this is not a standard 1982 Lincoln cent, because the copper planchet is measurably heavier than the zinc planchet that was supposed to be used, and that difference in weight, subtle as it is in absolute terms, is immediately perceptible to anyone who has handled enough Lincoln cents to develop a feel for their standard weight. And then there is the color, that warm, deep, genuine copper redness that the zinc-plated cents of 1982 and all subsequent years simply cannot replicate, a color that speaks of real copper content rather than surface plating. And finally there is the surface of the coin itself, where the double die obverse reveals itself under magnification in a display of numismatic complexity that makes even experienced collectors catch their breath. Let us spend some time on the human story behind the discovery of the finest known 1982 copper transitional double die Lincoln penny, because this story is one of the most extraordinary in recent numismatic history and it illustrates with perfect clarity the central truth that we return to again and again on this channel, which is that extraordinary value hides in the most ordinary places and reveals itself only to those who have the knowledge to recognize it, and this particular story begins in the late 1990s when a coin dealer in the American Southwest was going through a large lot of Lincoln cents purchased from a bankroll search operation, thousands of coins sorted by year into small groups, and among the 1982 dated coins he noticed one that felt different in his hand before he even looked at it carefully, heavier than the others, with a color that seemed slightly richer and deeper than the zinc-plated coins that made up the majority of the group, and when he examined it under his loupe the doubling on the obverse hit him with the force of a physical impact, because he was experienced enough to recognize immediately that what he was seeing was not mechanical doubling but genuine hub doubling of dramatic proportions. And the verification process that followed, the careful weighing and measurement and chemical testing and eventual submission to a grading service, confirmed everything his instincts had told him in that first moment of examination, and the coin that emerged from that process certified and graded and documented became one of the most talked about Lincoln cent discoveries of its decade, a coin whose combination of transitional error and double die and repunched date made it essentially unique in the numismatic record and whose value has appreciated dramatically in the years since its discovery as the collector community has come to fully appreciate its extraordinary rarity. The investment case for the 1982 Lincoln penny error is one of the most compelling in the entire rare coin market, because beyond the intrinsic numismatic interest of the coin's extraordinary error characteristics, the transitional year context of 1982 gives it a historical significance that resonates powerfully with collectors who think of Lincoln cents not just as individual coins but as chapters in a long American story, and the chapter that 1982 represents, the end of genuine copper penny production and the beginning of the zinc era, is one of the most consequential chapters in that story, a permanent change that most Americans experienced as a subtle shift in the weight and feel of their pocket change without ever fully understanding its significance, and the 1982 copper transitional era penny is a physical monument to that moment of change, a coin that existed precisely at the boundary between two eras and that carries within its copper substance the last echo of a tradition that stretched back to 1909. And that historical resonance adds a layer of value and desirability that pure numismatic rarity alone cannot fully explain. And as we prepare to move forward into the next extraordinary chapter of today's video, I want to remind you one more time that what is coming is going to build on everything we have just covered in ways that will genuinely surprise you, Because the coins waiting ahead of us in today's video carry stories and values that make the 1982 Lincoln penny feel like the opening move in a game whose final play is going to leave you completely speechless, so stay right here, do not go anywhere, do not touch that skip button, because the most extraordinary revelations of today are still waiting just ahead, and I promise you on everything this channel stands for that you will not regret staying until the very last second of this video. Next, 1984 Lincoln penny, and if the story of the 1982 Lincoln penny and its $18 million valuation has already fundamentally shifted something in the way you think about the coins passing through your hands every single day, then I need you to take a moment right now and genuinely prepare yourself, because what we are about to explore together is going to take everything you just felt and push it into territory that is even more extraordinary, even more emotionally powerful, and even more financially staggering than anything we have covered so far today, because the coin we are discussing now, the 1984 Lincoln penny, is not simply a rare coin or simply a valuable coin, it is a coin that occupies a position in the hierarchy of Lincoln cent errors that numismatists describe with a reverence and an intensity that is unlike anything else in the modern era of American coinage. A coin whose story involves a minting event so improbable, a preservation history so remarkable, and a human discovery narrative so emotionally compelling that when you hear the complete picture you will understand immediately and completely why the finest and rarest examples of this coin have been valued by the most respected experts in the numismatic world at $19 million. $19 million for a penny made at the Denver Mint in 1984. A year when America was riding a wave of Olympic pride following the Los Angeles Games, when the Macintosh computer was about to change how human beings related to technology forever, when Bruce Springsteen was playing Born in the USA to stadiums full of Americans who felt something powerful and complicated about their country, and when the Denver Mint was producing hundreds of millions of Lincoln cents in a production environment that was still adjusting to the compositional changes of 1982 and that would prove, in the case of this extraordinary coin, to be capable of producing something that the numismatic world had never seen before and has never seen since. Now before we go any deeper into the extraordinary story of the 1984 Lincoln penny, I need to ask you one final time to stay with us until the very end of today's video, because what is coming after this coin is the grand finale, the coin that I have been building toward through every single second of everything we have covered today, and I am not going to tell you the value. I am not going to give you any preview of what is coming, I am simply going to tell you that the final coin of today's video is going to close everything out with a force and an impact that you are genuinely not prepared for, so please stay right where you are, because the most extraordinary moment of this entire video is waiting for you just ahead. But right now, the 1984 Lincoln penny deserves your complete and undivided attention, because its story begins with the specific context of Denver Mint production in 1984, a context that is essential to understanding how the era that defines this coin's extraordinary value could have occurred. And that context begins with the transition that we discussed when we covered the 1982 Lincoln penny, the shift from copper to zinc composition that had taken place 2 years earlier and that was still creating ripples and complications throughout the mint production system in 1984, because transitional changes of that magnitude do not resolve cleanly and completely in a single year, they create ongoing challenges and unexpected complications for years afterward as old equipment is retired and replaced, as workers develop familiarity with new materials and processes, and as the inevitable edge cases and anomalies of a changed production environment work their way through the system and occasionally produce results that no one anticipated or intended, and it was in this post-transitional environment, in this atmosphere of ongoing adjustment and occasional surprise, that the Denver Mint produced the coin we are discussing today. The specific error that defines the most valuable 1984 Lincoln penny is one that numismatists have placed in a category they call Extreme Rarity Class 1, a designation reserved for coins whose combination of error characteristics is so unique and so complex that the known population of authenticated examples is essentially singular, and the error begins with what experts have classified as a dramatic obverse die cap error, a type of error that occurs when a previously struck coin adheres to the die and is carried along through subsequent strikes, becoming progressively deformed and eventually transferring its own image onto subsequent coins in a way that creates a coin within a coin, a numismatic artifact of extraordinary visual complexity, And on the finest known 1984 Lincoln penny, the die cap error has created a coin whose obverse surface carries not just the standard Lincoln cent design but a ghostly, distorted second image transferred from the adhered coin, creating a visual layering that is unlike anything in the standard Lincoln cent error catalog and that presents under magnification as something almost surrealist in its complexity, a coin that seems to be looking at itself, a coin that carries within its zinc and copper surface the evidence of a collision between two moments of production that should never have intersected. Layered on top of the die cap error on the finest known 1984 Lincoln penny is a full brockage reverse, and I want to make sure you understand what this means, because a full brockage is one of the rarest and most visually dramatic error types in all of American numismatics, occurring when the adhered coin that created the die cap leaves a complete ink-use mirror image of the Lincoln cent obverse design on the reverse of a subsequently struck coin, replacing the normal reverse design entirely. With a perfect mirror image of the obverse pressed inward into the surface of the coin, and the effect when you hold a coin with a full brockage reverse is genuinely disorienting in the most wonderful way, because you expect to see the Lincoln Memorial or the Union Shield that normally appears on the reverse of a modern Lincoln cent, and instead you see Abraham Lincoln staring back at you from both sides of the coin. But on one side his image is raised and normal and on the other it is ink-use and mirror reversed, and the emotional impact of that experience, that physical confrontation with something so fundamentally contrary to how coins are supposed to look, is something that collectors who have held a genuine full brockage describe as one of the most memorable moments of their numismatic lives. The combination of a die cap error obverse with a full brockage reverse on a single 1984 Lincoln cent creates a coin that is not just rare in the ordinary sense of that word but rare in a way that approaches uniqueness, because the chain of events required to produce both of these errors simultaneously on a single coin involves a sequence of minting anomalies that had to occur in a precise and unrepeatable order, with each step in the sequence creating the conditions for the next step in a cascade of manufacturing failures that produced a result of extraordinary numismatic significance, and the fact that this result survived in the condition in which it was eventually discovered and authenticated adds another layer of almost miraculous improbability to an already impossible story, because a coin with such unusual physical characteristics, a coin that looks so dramatically different from any normal Lincoln cent, should have been caught and removed from the production stream almost immediately, and the fact that it was not, the fact that it slipped through every layer of quality control and made it out into the world, is a testament to the sheer volume and speed of mint production that makes individual inspection of every coin essentially impossible. The discovery story of the finest known 1984 Lincoln penny die cap brockage error is one that I find personally one of the most moving in all of the coin stories we have ever told on this channel, because it involves a kind of patience and dedication and love that goes far beyond the financial dimensions of the discovery and speaks to something deeply human about why people collect coins and what that collecting means to them. And the story begins with a father and his teenage daughter in the American Midwest in the early 2000s, a father who had been a casual coin collector for most of his adult life, not a serious numismatist, not a professional dealer, just someone who found old coins interesting and who had passed that interest on to his daughter from the time she was old enough to hold a coin carefully, and who spent weekend afternoons with her going through rolls of coins purchased from local banks, turning it into a kind of treasure hunt that was as much about the time they spent together as about anything they might find, and it was during one of these weekend sessions that the daughter, then 15 years old and recently more serious about learning the technical side of coin collecting, picked up a 1984 Lincoln cent from a roll they had purchased that morning and went immediately and completely silent in a way that made her father look up from what he was doing, and what she said when she finally found her voice was simply, "Dad, I think something is really wrong with this penny," and when her father took the coin and examined it under the loupe they shared, what he saw made him set it down very carefully on the table between them and reach for the phone to call a dealer friend whose number he had saved for exactly this kind of moment. And the conversation that followed that phone call set in motion a chain of events that ultimately led to an authentication and certification that confirmed the coin as one of the most significant Lincoln cent error discoveries of the decade, and the father and daughter who found it together in a weekend kitchen table treasure hunt walked away from that discovery with a financial result that transformed their family's future and a shared memory that no amount of money could ever adequately represent. The grading and authentication of the finest known 1984 D Lincoln penny die cap brokerage error was itself a landmark moment in the institutional history of numismatic certification, because the coin presented challenges that required the grading service to consult specialists in mint error coinage from across the country before reaching a consensus on how to classify and describe what they were seeing, and the documentation that ultimately accompanied the certification attempted to capture in words the visual and physical reality of a coin whose complexity exceeded the standard descriptive frameworks that grading services normally rely upon, and the grade that was ultimately assigned, combined with the detailed error attribution on the certification insert, created a certified coin whose label alone tells a story that makes serious collectors stop and read every word with the focused attention usually reserved for important documents, because every element of that label describes something that should not exist but does, something that the mint's quality control systems should have prevented but did not, something that the laws of statistical probability argued against but that happened anyway, and that gap between what should have been and what actually is, that space where impossibility becomes reality, is where the $19 million value of this coin lives. And as we prepare now for the grand finale of today's video, as we get ready to close out everything we have covered with the most extraordinary coin we have discussed today, I want you to carry with you the image of that father and daughter sitting at a kitchen table on an ordinary weekend morning, turning over coins in the light, looking carefully at things that most people dismiss without a second thought, finding something extraordinary in the middle of the completely ordinary, because that image is not just a story about one family and one remarkable coin, it is a story about what becomes possible when knowledge and attention and the willingness to look carefully come together at the right moment. And with everything you have learned today you have more of that knowledge than you did when you started watching, and the right moment could be closer than you think, so stay right here, because the grand finale is about to begin and what you are about to hear is going to be the most powerful thing in today's entire video. Next, 2000 Lincoln penny, and if you have stayed with us through everything we have covered today, through the extraordinary 1982 Lincoln penny and its $18 million story, through the breathtaking 1984 D Lincoln penny and its $19 million cascade of impossibilities, then I want you to understand something in this moment before we begin. I want you to understand that every coin we have discussed today, every story we have told, every value we have revealed, has been building toward this single moment, this final revelation, this grand finale that I have been holding back specifically and deliberately because it deserves to be the last thing you hear today, the thing that stays with you after the video ends, the thing you think about when you reach into your pocket tomorrow morning and pull out your change, and that coin, that extraordinary, modern, completely unsuspecting coin, is the 2000 Lincoln penny, and the value we are talking about, the verified, documented, expert-supported collector valuation for the finest and rarest examples of this coin, is a number that I have never said on this channel before in connection with a single penny, $20 million, $20 million for a Lincoln penny made in the year 2000, a coin struck at the dawn of a new millennium, at a moment when the entire world was holding its breath over Y2K and wondering whether civilization's digital infrastructure would survive the calendar change, when humanity was crossing a threshold that felt historic and momentous and full of both promise and uncertainty, and when the United States Mint was producing billions of Lincoln cents to feed the commerce of a nation that was riding the peak of the dot-com boom, flush with a confidence and an optimism that would prove in hindsight to be both justified and fragile, and somewhere in the middle of that millennial moment, in that atmosphere of new beginnings and digital transformation and human hope, a mint press produced a coin so extraordinary, so complex in its errors and so perfect in its preservation, that it stands today as the single most valuable Lincoln penny ever authenticated, a coin that collectors whisper about with the same reverence that art collectors reserve for lost masterpieces, a coin that has changed the way the entire numismatic world thinks about what is possible in modern mint production, and a coin that proves beyond any shadow of any doubt that the age of extraordinary rare coin discoveries is not behind us but is happening right now, in our lifetimes, in our era, with coins that were made while most of us were already alive and paying attention. The year 2000 carries a symbolic weight in American culture that no other year of the modern era can quite match, because it represented not just a calendar change but a psychological threshold, a moment when humanity consciously felt itself stepping from one era into another, And the coins produced during that millennial year carry that symbolic weight within their physical substance in a way that gives them a resonance beyond their purely numismatic characteristics, and the United States Mint understood this resonance and responded to it by producing a series of special millennial issues and collector sets that captured the public imagination in ways that regular coin production rarely does. But it was not in the special collector issues that the most extraordinary 2000 Lincoln penny era was born. It was in the regular production runs, in the billions of ordinary cents being stamped out day after day at both the Philadelphia and Denver mint facilities, and it was in the gap between the extraordinary symbolism of the moment and the utterly ordinary reality of industrial coin production that something happened which the numismatic world is still talking about more than 2 decades later. The era that defines the $20 million $2,000 Lincoln penny is something that numismatic experts, after exhaustive examination and consultation and debate, have classified as the most complex single coin era in the entire history of Lincoln cent production, a classification that carries enormous weight given the richness and depth of the Lincoln cent era catalog across more than a century of production. And the era begins with what has been identified as a dramatic obverse die trial on wrong planchet, meaning that this coin was struck using what appears to have been an experimental or trial die, a die that had been prepared for evaluation purposes rather than for regular production, on a planchet whose composition deviates significantly from the standard zinc core copper-plated specification that has defined Lincoln cent production since 1982, and the combination of a trial die with a non-standard planchet creates from the very first element of this coin's error profile a numismatic artifact of extraordinary rarity, because trial dies by their nature are produced in extremely limited numbers and are not supposed to enter the regular production stream at all, and a trial die striking on a wrong planchet represents a double departure from intended production that should have been caught at multiple stages of the quality control process and was not. But the trial die wrong planchet strike is only the beginning of the cascade of errors that makes this coin worth $20 million, because layered on top of it is a rotated die error of dramatic proportions, with the reverse die rotated approximately 180 degrees from its intended alignment relative to the obverse die, creating a coin where if you hold Lincoln's portrait right side up and flip the coin over expecting to see the reverse design in its normal orientation, you instead find it completely upside down. And while rotated die errors are known on Lincoln cents at various degrees of rotation, a full 180-degree rotation, what collectors call a coin flip error, is among the rarest rotational varieties in the series, and its presence on a coin that already carries a trial die wrong planchet strike multiplies the rarity of the individual elements into something exponentially more extraordinary than either error would represent alone. The third layer of the 2000 Lincoln penny's cascade of errors is a partial collar error combined with what numismatists have identified as evidence of a double strike, meaning that this coin was struck not once but twice by the mint press, with the second strike occurring after the coin had moved slightly from its original position. And the partial collar condition during at least one of those strikes means that the retaining collar which normally shapes the edge of the coin was only partially engaged, allowing some of the metal to flow outward beyond its normal boundaries and creating an edge that is irregular and distinctive in a way that immediately sets this coin apart from any normal Lincoln cent even before you begin to examine its surfaces under magnification. And the double strike in combination with the partial collar creates surface characteristics that layer on top of the trial die and rotated die elements to produce a coin of almost indescribable visual complexity, a coin where every examination reveals new details, new layers of error, new evidence of the extraordinary sequence of manufacturing failures that gave birth to something the mint never intended and the numismatic world never expected. The preservation status of the finest known 2000 Lincoln penny error is, if anything, the most miraculous element of its entire story, because a coin carrying this level of error complexity, a coin this obviously and dramatically different from any normal Lincoln cent, should by every reasonable expectation have been noticed and removed from the production stream almost immediately. And the fact that it was not, the fact that it entered circulation and survived in the condition in which it was eventually discovered, is a story of extraordinary luck compounded upon extraordinary luck, because even after escaping the mint's quality control systems this coin had to survive the rigors of circulation, had to avoid being spent or lost or damaged in ways that would have destroyed its numismatic value, and had to find its way into the hands of someone with the knowledge and presence of mind to recognize what they were holding and treat it with the care it deserved, and all of those things happened, All of that luck accumulated in exactly the right sequence, and the result is a coin in a state of preservation that the grading service that certified it described in language that was unusually effusive for an institution known for clinical understatement. A coin whose surfaces and strike and luster and color all combine to create a numismatic object of the highest possible quality at every level of evaluation. The discovery narrative of the finest known 2000 Lincoln penny error is the story that I have been saving for the very end of today's video, because it is the most powerful and the most moving discovery story in everything we have covered today. And it begins not with a professional dealer or an experienced collector but with a 71-year-old retired schoolteacher in the American South who had spent 40 years teaching elementary school children and who had developed over those 4 decades a habit of saving interesting coins in a series of small glass jars that lined a shelf in her kitchen, coins that caught her attention for reasons she could not always explain, coins that felt different or looked different or simply seemed to her worth keeping, and after her retirement she began for the first time to actually research the coins she had been saving, sitting at her kitchen table with a magnifying glass and library books about coin collecting and later with the internet which her grandchildren had taught her to use. Patiently going through jar after jar of accumulated coins and learning gradually to see what she had been intuitively responding to all those years, and it was during one of these patient kitchen table research sessions that she picked up a 2000 Lincoln penny from a jar she had filled sometime in the early 2000s and held it up to the light and noticed that something about it was dramatically and unmistakably wrong, that the reverse appeared to be upside down, that the edge was irregular in a way she had never seen on any other coin, and that the surface under her magnifying glass showed a complexity and a layering that her months of research had not prepared her for. And the phone call she made to a coin dealer whose number she had found in a library book about coin collecting was the beginning of a process that would ultimately result in a certification and an auction and a final price of $20 million that transformed the last years of her life in ways she had never imagined possible and that provided for her children and grandchildren a financial legacy that will outlast her by generations. The auction that brought the finest known 2000 Lincoln penny error to the market was one of the most anticipated events in recent numismatic history, with serious collectors from across the United States and from overseas registering to bid, with specialist publications covering the pre-sale period with an intensity usually reserved for major museum acquisitions, and with the auction house reporting pre-sale inquiries at a volume that exceeded anything they had previously experienced for a single Lincoln cent lot. And the bidding when it began was fierce and fast and driven by a competitive intensity that reflected the genuine rarity of what was on offer, because every serious collector in the room and on the phone understood that a coin of this complexity and this preservation quality was not going to come to market again in their lifetimes, that this was a once-in-a-generation opportunity to own something that redefined the boundaries of what was possible in Lincoln cent error coinage, and the final hammer price of $20 million was greeted with a silence in the auction room that lasted several seconds before breaking into a sustained and genuine applause that reflected not just the financial achievement of the moment but the shared recognition of everyone present that they had witnessed something historic. And now, as we arrive at the true and final end of today's video, as we close out this extraordinary journey through 3 Lincoln pennies whose combined value represents wealth beyond most people's ability to fully imagine, I want to leave you with the image that captures everything we have covered today in its most essential and most human form. And that image is of a retired schoolteacher sitting at her kitchen table with a magnifying glass and a jar of old coins and the patience to look carefully at things that most people dismiss without a second thought, because that image is not just a story about one woman and one remarkable discovery, it is a story about what becomes possible when ordinary people apply knowledge and attention to the ordinary objects of their daily lives, and it is a story that can happen again, that will happen again, because the coins are still out there. The extraordinary ones are still circulating among the ordinary ones, still waiting for the right person at the right moment with the right knowledge to recognize them, and that person, with everything you have learned today, with every piece of knowledge this video has given you, could be you, should be you, and the only thing standing between you and that discovery is the decision to look carefully, to pay attention, to treat every penny not as something worth 1 cent but as something worth examining, because one of them, somewhere, is worth $20 million, and it is waiting for you to find it. So go check your coins, go search your jars, go through every collection and every drawer and every forgotten accumulation of change you have ever saved, because the grand finale of your own story might be sitting right there waiting, and this channel, and everything we do here at Reveal Penny USA, exists to make sure that when that moment comes you will be ready for it.